We'll end it right there. Well, welcome to Beyond the Devastation. My name is John Perez. I am your host for this afternoon because I'm always the host, so it makes it easier. Today, we have a great guest, and we met by way of a gentleman called John Maxwell, not John Maxwell himself, but through the organization. And we have a mutual friend that brought us together. I was looking for somebody that was doing leadership training in prisons because I've been doing prison ministry since 1997. So I got a list of 5 people. Of those 5 people, there was only one guy that called me back. That was it. And he's got a great story. And he's got a podcast. It's called Background Checks, which he'll talk about. He has been incarcerated, been liberated, been set free. And he's got an awesome story about what he's done with his life and how God really turned it around. And I get an honor to introduce this guy, J. Dan Gum. And I was just sharing in the green room that there aren't too many Gums that I've met. My old boss was Gum, and here he is. I'm talking to this guy called Gum, but now this guy is just about as tall as he is, but he's a little bit on the bigger side. So welcome, Jay. It is an honor to get a chance to talk to you. And again, our mutual friend brought us together, but I believe God brought us together. And I'm just going to give him all the credit. But tell us about your story. And before I do that, let me just do a little plug. Hey, listen, if you want to find us, let me just put the slide back up. We're on Google Podcasts, we're on Apple Podcasts, and we are on Spotify. So if you want to get us, you can find us. And so please subscribe, download it. You want to hear this story? I can't wait to hear the story because I read about it, but I want to hear about it. So, Jay, welcome to Beyond the Devastation, all the way from Texas. Thank God for technology. Jay.
Thank you for having. It's an honor to be here, man. And yeah, it's been a long time coming too, because I remember when you first reached out to me, and by way of Darlene. And I was just like, at first, because I meet so many people, I was like, who's Darlene? Who's Darlene? Then I remembered, okay, you were at the IMC, and I met her at the last IMC I went to. And so it was cool that somebody remembered to give somebody else my contact info. And man, I hope I don't know anybody else on that list of people that didn't call you back. I bet I know at least one name. But
you probably do, but we're not going to talk about it.
We can talk about it after the show.
We can drop that afterwards. And
then I will get on to him for not calling you back.
And so listen, I always tell people, look, it's God's timing, and it's the way God puts it together. So I'm okay with that. But
yeah,
the whole purpose of this podcast for me was bringing people on that had been through something traumatic in their life and how God brought them out on the other side. Jay, I read your story, but I think it's more powerful if you explain it. Take us through those situations in your life that brought us to where we are to have this great conversation. So the floor is yours. I'll interject it where I need to, but I think you need to share the story.
Well, number one, I love the name of your podcast, Beyond the Devastation, because most, I won't say all, but most Christians have been through something devastating. Now, devastation looks different for everybody. My devastation looks a little different than the next person's, but I feel like we've all been through something that was devastation in our life, whether it's mental, emotional, financial, criminal, whatever, addiction wise. And so I just love, because there is something beyond the devastation, and we don't usually get to hear about it in the news. There's not much beyond the devastation in the news. We just get to hear devastation. So
they only talk about it because that's what sells newspapers.
Absolutely.
Man. That's what keeps CNN and Fox on the screen. If there wasn't devastation, they don't want to talk about listen, you notice, and it's a funny thing. Notice when they put on the good stuff, when there's 2 minutes left in the segment, right? That's it.
By the time
the first 58 minutes are talking about everything else. But the only thing
good stuff. By the way, here exactly. We want to share this before we go. Oops, we're out of time.
Yeah. And by the way, this was our hero for the day. 30 seconds. Yeah, and we're out.
I'm a normal guy who grew up in a normal Christian family. My mom and dad were saved when they got married. We were brought up in church all of our lives. We went to Christian schools all of our lives, and I did not like it. I wanted to be at public school, and so early on, we were at one Baptist school in church for my grade school, and when we were about to move into junior high, I was about to graduate to 7th grade, and my mom and dad came to us and said, we're leaving this church and leaving this school. And we went to another church, another school, and it was a Pentecostal Assembly of God church and Assembly of God school, which, if anybody knows anything about denominations, Baptist and Pentecostal are pretty much at the opposite ends of the spectrum as far as everything.
And it's funny you say Assembly of God. So this is another connection that we have, right? So Church of God in Christ and Assembly of God, guess what? We're all the same family. It really was. It was in the early 1900s when
we just weren't very nice to the Church of God in Christ.
Weren't
very nice to the African American community.
No.
And so they started their own Assembly of God.
Yeah, we're getting better now.
We are getting better. We are. Come a long way. Still got a long way to go, but we've come a long way.
Absolutely.
And so I was so mad because I wanted to play football. The new school didn't have football. That's when my anger issue really took center stage at that point. I started making bad grades on purpose to get back at my mom. I saw that didn't work. That just got me in trouble. And then so I thought, well, how can I get back at my mom and dad for making me move, lose all my friends? And, the one thing parents don't want their kids to do is hang out with the wrong people. So I searched for the wrong people at my new school in my new church and hung out with them on purpose. And in 8th grade, I set the school on fire, not in a supernatural Pentecostal spiritual way. I literally set the school on fire and got suspended, got my butt whooped a lot. And that carried over into high school. Those same friends that I was hanging around that I shouldn't have been, we started forming a group. We all worked together with their older brothers one summer, and it was hot in the summer in Texas. It's hot. And we were all pulling Gatorades out of this cooler throughout the day. And this is my first day to work with them. And they were their older brothers, my classmates, but their older brothers we were working with. At the end of the day, they pulled out this blue ice chest. It was different than the one we've been drinking out of all day. And all of a sudden each started pulling beer out. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, what? I mean, I'm 14, I mean, why are they drinking beer? They're my age, and their brothers are 18. So I know they're not old enough to drink. Now here I am. I'm like, my heart started beating real fast. It was the first time in my life that I really felt the power of temptation. All my wrong I did before that, setting the school on fire, I didn't really feel it wasn't tempting. I just did it because it was fun to me. But this was the very first time that I felt the power and the draw of temptation and sin in my life in a heavy way. My heart was beating and I was like torn. I was like, these are the guys that I'm trying to win their acceptance because I'm the new guy. And these are the guys that I want to win their approval, but I want to honor my mom and dad as well. As mad as I was at my mom and dad, I wanted to honor them.
Right.
But I couldn't do both in that moment. But because I didn't make the decision for myself and I was pondering it in my heart and my mind, somebody else made the decision for me and threw a beer at me. And I caught it. I downed it. And as it was going down, I remember thinking, this is the worst tasting thing I've ever put in my mouth. But as I'm looking at my peripheral, I'm seeing these guys, my friends and their older brothers begin to accept me. They begin to cheer me on. And because they knew I was the new guy, the goody two shoes of the group. And they didn't know, that I had it in me to chug a beer like that. And I chugged it. And by the time I felt the buzz, the actual physical buzz from that beer, I said, give me another one. And I downed it. And by the end of that second one, I wasn't drinking a beer anymore. I was drinking acceptance.
Right.
I was drinking approval from those guys.
Yeah. Can we pause there? I mean, there's a whole story we got to get to, but point number one, when you pick your friends, are you more concerned about drinking acceptance or drinking the water that only Christ can give? Point number one.
Yep.
Because if you're drinking acceptance, The buzz you're going to get is temporal.
Oh man.
But what God can give you is life lasting. Is just that it's your choice.
Yeah.
So anyway, point number one. I don't want
That's
anybody to
good.
miss that because that was important.
That's good. That's good.
Go ahead, Jay.
So I went on and later that next year, my sophomore year, that same group of guys, we were under the stage. Our gym was our worship center for the church.
Okay.
Around the gym were the classrooms. During lunch, we would sneak under the stage because the gym was also the worship center. So there's this big stage, and they would store like the wrestling mats and stuff underneath there. We knew that. So the first 30 days of my sophomore year, we all snuck under there. We took weed and liquor, not beer, liquor.
So now you graduated.
So I graduated. I still didn't like any of that taste of the liquor, but I liked what it did for me. I'd never smoked weed until that point, and I tried it for the first time. I didn't like the way it tasted either, but again, I liked the way it made me feel. And so first 30 days, we never even saw the lunchroom. We'd go in there, Visine. We would get high and drunk, and we were spraying cans of hairspray with lighters, like torches, torches, you know. I mean, we could have set the whole school, church building on fire.
Literally on fire.
Yeah. And I mean, if you haven't guessed by now, I'm a pyromaniac. I love fire, you know, and there's a pattern here. So anyway, later that year, halfway through that year, we had a homecoming party, same group of guys. We all got kicked out for drugs and alcohol. I thought, now I get to go to public school. No, my mom put me in another school called Christway. She put me in that school. By March of my sophomore year, I was kicked out of there for drugs and alcohol. Finished up in summer school. My mom, the private school she taught at, said, if your son doesn't straighten up and is able to come back here, is not unable to come back here, then you don't have a job. And so I had to fake straighten up just so my mom would keep her job. Floated through junior and senior high school, went off to college in Kansas, majored in Jack Daniels. Some people don't know there's a course called Jack Daniels. But there is. It's not one you sign up for. You just show up to class. And
I remember hearing about that class.
I actually have a certificate from that class that says Jack Daniels playing cards. And I got some degrees in Jack Daniels. Mostly the way they're read is first degree felony, second degree felony, DWI. So definitely graduated, dropped out of college, obviously because of alcohol, came home and became a bartender, working at a restaurant bar. Began piling up public intoxications, minor in possessions, got arrested at a frat party in San Antonio or San Marcos. And then when I turned 21, it was all over, you know. I mean, now it was legal to drink.
Correct.
1993, I got my first DWI on a Friday night. The following Tuesday, I got my second DWI because I'm an overachiever. The very next year, I hadn't even gone to court for those first two. The very next year, December 16th, 1994, I got my third DWI. January 1st, 1995, they passed a law in Texas that 3 DWIs is a felony. So I got my third one in just in the nick of time. But that December 16th, 1994, nobody bailed me out of jail. I couldn't because it was my third one. I couldn't bail myself out of jail. So I had to wait to go to court from jail. So I was actually in jail on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And this was the first time that I spent a holiday in jail. You know, I mean, I was 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks. I got out right before New Year's Eve, but it was 2.5 weeks in jail. And that was the first time. My niece was born on December 8th, and I hadn't seen her yet. So when my sister brought my niece that I hadn't seen to jail, I had to see my niece for the first time through plexiglass. Wow. And that was the first time I realized in my life that my choices don't just impact me. They impact everyone around me, friends and family.
So point number 2, your choices are a domino effect, right? So what I do today can impact my kids for generations, and it can impact my family for a lifetime, and it can impact them today.
Yeah.
And so many of us, when we go out, we're selfishly only thinking about ourselves, but we forget about the residue that can hit everybody. So, point number 2. Go ahead, Jay, because this is good stuff.
So I straightened up for a little bit. I went to my mentor and I told him, I said, hey, I'm out of jail, but I still have 3 DWIs that I haven't cleared up. And he's like, well, you should turn yourself in. So I didn't turn myself in till that next summer. But I did. I turned myself in, but I turned myself in. I was already kind of doing well. I was back in church. I was doing well, but I knew I was going to spend some time in jail. So even though I was already turned my life back over to God and knew I had to go through this jail experience, I tear off the bottom of my shoe, the sole, I rip it out, and I put cigarettes and matches and a striker in the sole of my shoe. Because I know I'm going to be in holding cell for 3 days. I don't have any money. Nobody's going to put money in my book. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to make some money in the holding cell. And that's what I did. Part of that was my entrepreneurial spirit, but the other part was still my criminal thinking that I didn't let fully go of. And so, long story short, I spent 2-3 months in the Dallas County Jail, spent a month in the Tarrant County Jail, that's Fort Worth. And then I came out on fire for God. Went back to my alma mater, Christian school, coached, worked there, started dating a Christian teacher. But during that time, I tell people I was almost all in for God. I was 99% in. And that 1%,
usually the 1% that gets you in trouble, right?
1% is too much to give the devil and not enough to give to God. You know what I mean? I mean, it's
funny. There's an old song that they sing in you hear it in coaching. 99.5 won't do, right?
Yeah,
and it just won't do.
It's so true. And the devil was patient. We could learn from the devil in patience. He was very patient. He didn't bother me for 2 years because he knew he had that one little 1% hook in me. And to me, it was cigarette smoking. Now I know there's going to be people in heaven that smoke cigarettes here on earth. I'm not saying cigarette smoking keeps you out of heaven, but what in that 1%, it doesn't matter what it is. It matters what it represents.
Correct.
It represented a tie to my old ways that I was not willing to yield to God. And so that 99%, I was worshiping. I was on the worship team. I was leading Bible studies. I was on fire, but there was just this 1% that I had, and the devil waited. And in summer of 1997, so 2 full years, summer of 1997, the church or the school said they weren't going to hire me back. They let me go. My girlfriend had already been dating somebody else to my unbeknownst to me.
Yeah, unbeknownst to you, right?
And she broke up with me. So in the same month, it's like all this happens. And
so here comes the devastation.
So instead of me drawing closer to the 99%, I drew to the 1%. I went off, smoked a cigarette, and I was doing it on a regular basis, like once a week or so. I'd go off, wouldn't tell anybody. Not like I was going out drinking or partying with friends. I would just sneak off, have a bad day, smoke a cigarette, and go back. But that day was different. That day, the devil said, okay, now there's a storm in his life, and now I can use that 1% as leverage. The devil came to me and said, oh, look what serving God got you. Wow. And I'm like, the devil's so sneaky because in every lie, there's a little nugget of truth, and it has to be there, or logic. It has to be there for you to even halfway believe the lie. And so he said, look what serving God got you. Because I was serving God and I did get that, but not one of them didn't have to do with the other. And so he said, you might as well start drinking again. I'm like, I can't do that. And he said, you're already smoking. Now he exploited that 1%. He said, you're already smoking. You might as well start drinking again. And I did. Summer of 1997, I no more was I going to live a divided life. I'd lived 50-50 before. I'd lived 99, 1% before, but those were all divided lives. I always had one foot in the church and one foot in the world, or some sort of foot in the world.
Correct.
At this point, I said, no more. I'm going all in. And I rejected everything God, everything Christian, every Christian friend. If I saw you in public, I didn't try to hide my cigarette or my drink. I would blow smoke in your face. The Christian friends that were trying to, turn me back around. And I rejected 100%. I turned from my faith. I 100%. I mean, I think I even looked at God and said, I'm done with you. I reject everything that you are about in my life. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And I believe that was, to me, I believe that was a day, a defining day. If I'd have died after that, I believe I wouldn't have gone to heaven.
Oh, you would have cracked hell wide open, as they say.
Yes.
So here you are. Yeah. So here you are. You've got 3 DWIs. You've got you got hit. You got pancaked on that day. Let's put it that way. Just a football terminology, right? You got pancaked on that day. And now, like you said, the hook was there. It just had to be turned. The light had to be turned on that situation. And it was. So now you've got all of this. You've turned away from God. And you're about to face something that you went from the holding cell to a different cell.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I would say that was that day when I say I separated myself totally from God. I believe that was the day that I was truly locked myself in a prison that was going to take a supernatural miracle to get out of. And, when you give yourself 100%, I didn't get on my knees and say, oh, Satan, here I am. But by rejecting God 100%,
right,
I made myself available to the devil 100%. So to the degree that you hold back from God, that's the degree you make available to the devil. And so now I was all in for the devil. And I worked for a escort service. I was a driver, driving girls who were selling their bodies around to people who were paying for those bodies. I was selling drugs to those girls. I was making a profit and exploiting situations. And then after that, I mean, I had guns pointed to my head. I had that. I'm surprised I got out of that job alive after a year and a half. And then I moved on. I'm drinking like crazy, not getting any more DWIs, but I'm drinking like crazy. Finally tried all the hard drugs except for marijuana. And I had to try them because I was selling them to the girls, and having parties with them and everything. So then I quit that job, went back to work at my assistant manager job at Walmart. And I was living pretty good, but I wasn't serving the Lord. I was still 100% against anything Christian. And I got my 4th DWI. And the lawyer actually was, after 4 to 5 months of investigating my claim, she called me and said, hey, I think you're right. So I got a September 2002 was my 4th DWI. And then in February of 2003, she called me and said, hey, we're going to get this dismissed. I'm like, that's great. So I go out and celebrate that night. Well, the way an alcoholic celebrates is you go get drunk. I got my 5th DWI on the very night that my 4th DWI was going to get dismissed. And she's like, I can't help you now. They're going to keep the 4th one there. And she said, because the other 3 will come up, your 5th one will come up. No jury is going to let you slide on that 4th one. So at that point, I get, I'm facing an indictment. I've never been indicted before, a felony. That when you get a felony, you're indicted. So I go to court. I told my boss at Walmart, I said, I may not come back. I've never done this before. I don't know what's going to happen. I go and I appear. They read State of Texas versus J.D. Gum, 4th and 5th DWI felony. And they said, we'll see you later. Bam, start to walk out. The court clerk says, hey, judge, he hasn't paid his court-appointed attorney fees.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm just like, I didn't know I had to. I thought court-appointed attorneys were free. They said, well, you have a job, right? And I said, yeah. They said, well, if you have a job, they're not free. I'm like, man, I didn't know that. He goes, well, let me jog your memory. He revoked my bond, put me in jail, and I never got out. And I went to 2 weeks later, I tried to get my bond reinstated. And I'm on the stand, and the judge looks at my past, looks at my present, and tells the court, I have the actual transcripts. The judge says, I don't know when they're asking if they'll reinstate my bond, he goes, I don't know. I don't see a very bright future for Mr. Gum. So I'm not gonna reinstate his bond.
Wow.
And you know, when things like that are spoken over your life, you know, you can have several different responses and reactions.
You better believe
I was upset that he said that in the court, but I didn't really care that he was right either. Because if I didn't change anything at that moment, if I didn't change anything, he was absolutely right. My future was not bright. And so a few weeks later, my dad and my sisters are in the courtroom. He reads my sentences for my 4th and 5th DWI, which was 5 years each. My heart was so hard because I was growing in the devil. You can grow in the Lord and you can grow in the devil.
People don't realize that, Jay, but you're right.
I know. And so my heart was so hard at that point. The tears of my dad and my sisters didn't even move me. And so July 17th, 2003, I was transported from the county jail to prison. And first time in my life, I really was scared of something I was headed into because I just didn't know what to expect.
So let me ask
jail,
you
county jail, I knew I could
one
do.
thing. State prison is another. So let me ask you, because I hear this from some of the inmates. First night, the door literally now closes behind you. Now what? Where's your head? Because some of them are depending. I think you and I talked about it. Some of them are in defense mode.
Yep.
Some of them I'm in a corner mode. Some of them I don't care mode. Where were you?
You know, I think depending on which hour you talk to me, I think I could have been in any one of those. I was definitely scared, feared for a little bit, but then I realized, okay, I'm big, I'm ugly. I'm not going to get picked on in here. So I'm not going to be scared. Now I'm just going to be curious. I got to figure out what I got to do. Do I need to fight right now? Do I need to go beat somebody up right now?
Right.
You got to
establish your ground.
Yeah.
Right.
How do I get credibility in here? What do I do? I don't know anything to do. But that first night, I know in intake, I didn't get any sleep. But I finally got out of what they call the cages. That's intake. And I'll never forget, I saw a guy in there who was 31. He was actually leaving. He wasn't being intaked. He was being discharged. He had been in there for 12 years. So he'd gone in when he was 19. And he was this young black guy. And he still looked 21. He didn't look 31. And I remember him telling me, I made a mistake when I was young, but I'm finally going home. And that just that word from that kid kind of like, okay, well, if he made it 10 years, I know I can make it too. And I get into my cell assignment or my dorm assignment, and this one guy comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, man." And the first thing I thought of was, gosh, he's a white supremacist. I look like a white supremacist because I got a shaved head. Right. And I'm like, all these people are going to want to join the gang. And he's like, "Hey, man, I don't know who you're hanging with right now. I know it's your first night here. I'm going to give you some food because I know it's going to be a few weeks before you can get some on your own." And that guy's name was Jerry. And let me just tell you this, because I don't know, we may not have time to loop back to it, but he was the first guy I met in prison that gave me something. In 2009, I went back in with Mike Barber to the WIN unit. 2009. So from 2003 to 2009, went back in, and we're shaking the hands of all the inmates coming into service. And all of a sudden, I'm Jerry. Like, I know this guy. He looked at me, but he didn't even. And I'm like, and I forgot his name at that point, but I said, Hawk. And he turned, because Hawk was his best friend in prison at the time when I first got in there. And I knew if I said Hawk, he might. So he turned around. He's like, "Who's yelling Hawk?" I'm like, "Hey, come here." I'm like, "I don't remember your name, but I remember you and Hawk when I first got into prison back in 2003. He's like, "Oh my gosh." And I'm like, "I'm just telling you right now." And this dude was not a Christian. Like, "I'm just telling you right now, I'm living for the Lord now. And I'll never forget that you were the first person to feed me when I was in prison. And I want to say thank you." Wow. Because I don't think I ever did. And all of a sudden, after that weekend, we began writing, and we stay in touch today. He's already out, but he was depressed, suicidal. at one point in prison. I said, let me get you. I said, what would it take to get you out of this depression? He said, maybe if I could get in this class, but I stabbed a guy with a pencil a year ago and they're not going to let me in class. And so I said, what would you do if you want to be in this? I said, if I can get you in this class, this is called PEP. I said, if I can get you in this, will you do it? He goes, man, yeah. So I knew the recruiter. I already knew I could get him in. I'd do the recruiter. So I told the recruiter, I need you to get this guy in PEP. He goes, Jay, have you seen his record? I'm like, I know. Marcus, God doesn't look at our past and judge us. You've got to trust me on this. You need this. This guy needs to be in PEP. And he went to PEP. I told him, I said, hey, 10,000 apply, 300 get accepted, only about 60 graduate. I said, I need you to not be in that 240 that don't graduate. I need you to be in the graduating class. And he was. I got to go to his graduation, and he's doing great now. He's doing great. Anyway, I skipped a lot to tell you that
because we're tying this all in, and let's kind of tie it in. So now you're in. You served how long? When did the light go off? For you, and then tell us about this organization called Forgiven Felons that I've been putting up the website for. So if you can, when did the turnaround happen? Why? How did you get Forgiven Felons as a name? And then what does the organization do?
So I got transferred July 17th. By September 18th, 2003, I was already at my assigned unit. And I got into a fight, which is a pretty dramatic way. The book will have more details on that. But I got into a fight out in the fields and got thrown in solitary confinement. In Texas, we call it ADSEG, administrative segregation.
Yep.
I spent 8 days. On the very first day I went in, it was quiet. I mean, I just laid there. There's nothing. I have no property. I have no clothes but my boxers. And I'm laying there on the bed, staring at the concrete ceiling, staring at the metal floor or concrete floor, metal ceiling. And all day, it's just so quiet until about 10 p.m. Then I hear crying, and it's my own self crying. And it's because the Holy Spirit pretty much accosted the cell and just filled every inch of that cell and caused me to just cry uncontrollably. And that was my prodigal son moment, where I was running. I was laying on my back in a cell, but I was running home. And the next 7 days after that first day, I had a different conversation with God. And I love the fact that he kept me in there 8 days, which is new beginnings, number of new beginnings. He put me in on the 18th, September 18th. I got out of prison on April 18th. So the number 8 is in my life like crazy. I got married on the April 18th, 2008. But I got out, and a couple things I prayed was, God, don't let me out of prison until you know I'm ready to never come back. And that's just a tough prayer to pray, because every time I go into prison, I'm like, how many of y'all ready to go home? Everyone will raise their hand.
Oh, absolutely.
How many of y'all think God's ready for you to go home? Keep your hand up. And about half or more go down because they're not sure. Snowman. So,
that's right.
So I'm like, I prayed that prayer. But then he said to me, hey, listen, you've given me 50%. You've given me 99%. You even gave the devil 100%. You've never given me 100%. Try me at 100% and see what I give back. And I said, okay, you got it, God, you got it. And I mean, the return on that, he's never given me 100%. He's given me like 500%, 1,000, pressed down, shaken together, running over. Has he poured back?
Right.
And so I get out. He said, now you need to be mentored. So for about a year, I let some people mentor me, a couple guys, in particular.
Sounds like a Paul experience.
And then they got out. Yeah, they got out and they were ready to go change the world. I was like, all right, that's awesome. And then I began mentoring people, kind of flipped the script. But then I hear they're back in prison before I even made parole.
Wow.
And right then I was like, okay, God, I got some questions. I'm kind of confused because you anointed them to mentor me, and my mentors did not make it. So in my mind, I'm thinking, how am I going to make it if my own mentors didn't make it? And you anointed those mentors to disciple me. And he's like, I'm going to give you this dream, and as long as you pursue this dream, you'll never come back in this capacity.
Wow.
Okay. And so eventually the dream started to evolve, and he gave me the dream. And I knew what that meant because I read the first book I read for my personal development in prison was called The Dream Giver. And it's changed my life. Changed my life. It's by Bruce Wilkinson. I recommend it for everybody incarcerated and everybody not incarcerated. Did I leave anybody out? I don't know.
No, that we got people who are
everybody.
incarcerated that are not incarcerated because they're in their own prison at home. But yes, but
So
keep on going.
I recommend that. And so the dream he began to show me, and also it motivated me, but it made me mad. I'm like, Lord, I want to be a part of the solution. And
Right.
he said, you're going to be a part of the solution. So he starts showing me dreams of speaking and dreams of halfway house and all this stuff. And, one day I'm sitting in my cell and I'm serving the Lord. And I said, God, I said, I'm going to get out one day, and there's going to be a lot of skeptics in my life because I was in and out of church all my life, and nobody's going to believe me when I get home that I've changed. I said, I can handle those people. I can handle their negativity and their skepticism and their critique. I said, but Lord, I need you to convince me that I'm done with my old life. And he said to me, I'm going to make your old life like whipped cream to you. Now, whipped cream to me is the most vile, disgusting, demonic tasting thing in this world. I can't stand whipped cream at all. And even just watching somebody else eat whipped cream makes my gag muscles kick in.
You just throw up in your mouth. It kind of makes you want to throw up in your mouth. Gotcha.
And it's not because I don't like it. I don't try it. I've tried it, but it just won't stay in my body. Right. And he said, I'm going to make your old life like whipped cream to you. Like even the sight of it.
And you knew what that meant.
Spiritual. I knew, right. and
you knew exactly what that meant. That registered to you.
He could have said anything else and I wouldn't have believed him. But because he said that, I believed him. And then, so one day I'm like, all right, God, this all these things you want me to do. I got this label, felon. That's a big target. It's a big red X.
You ain't kidding.
I said, is there any way you can make that go away? Is there any way you can make it not so bright in my life? Because what you want me to do would be a lot easier. And he said, no. He said, in fact, I want you to embrace it. I'm like, what? He goes, you can embrace it. He's like, you can embrace something without letting it identify you. I'm like, okay. And he showed me his own scars. He said, see these scars in my hand? He goes, when I came back after I died and resurrected, he says, I could have easily already had my resurrected body, but I chose to keep the scars in my hand. And he said, but I don't identify with those. He said, it's a part of what I've been through, who I used to be.
But they don't define me.
They don't define me, but I embrace them. And he said, because he said, if I hadn't embraced them and kept them there, Thomas wouldn't have made it. He says, so sometimes, even if your scars in your past helps only one person, it's worth it. It's worth being transparent. And so anyway, he said, besides, felon is just a word. He said, it's a noun. He took me back to English class. It's a noun. You can't change. A noun is a person, place, thing right there. You can't change the definition of a noun, but you can change your perspective on that noun by adding an adjective to it. And he told me, he's like, look at your hair. He goes, hair is a noun. We don't know how to think about hair unless you put an adjective in front of it. Brown hair, curly hair, long hair, straight hair. That adjective in front of the hair, the noun, tells you how to look at that noun. And he said, correct. So today I'm gonna put an adjective in front of your noun. And from this day forward, you're not going to be known as felon. You're going to be known as forgiven felon. And that word, that adjective, will change the way you see that noun and everybody else, how they see that noun in your life.
Yeah,
so you're not going to.
Yeah. And let me do a little infomercial for everybody. So at the bottom of your screen, www.forgivenfelons.org, right? If you want to hear more, certainly read about Jay's story, you can go right there. But let me do this because I promised I was going to do this plug and I'm going to do it. So if you want to support what he does and give to what he does, you can go to forgivenfelons.org/support. There's a donate page that I'm looking at that you can't see, but I can see on my screen. I want you to give because this is a personal project for me because I know I'm a benefactor to seeing what God did because my father was incarcerated. He was told he was never getting out. He was told he would always have a record. I'm going to tell you right now, God cleaned up his record. Yeah, there is no record to be found, as a matter of fact.
Amen. Yeah,
and
that's a great story.
So I know that all things are possible. So I'm going to ask you to give and sow into his ministry, because the vision he has is big.
Yeah.
You see, he's a big guy. It's a big ministry. So, Jay, tell us about the vision that you have, where this money's going to, and how it can help those that come out of prison.
Yeah. So that the dream in vision in prison, that the dream was given to me was transitional houses, but not just houses, not just giving people a fish, but teaching them how to fish. And so the resource center, for the last 10 years, we've housed guys, helped them get back on their feet. Some of them bought houses last year, first time homeowners, but we want to do more, and not just for the guys in our house. We want to do more for the whole community, Dallas whole. So God began putting these pieces in place for what we call the resource center, because we just want to resource the heck out of everybody so they have every chance possible not to go back to prison. And they're going to be vocational trades. We're going to start with welding, lighting and electrical, audio and video production, and t-shirt design and t-shirt printing. And so, but we're going to have recovery classes, financial literacy classes. We're going to have some John Maxwell leadership classes.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing so many things in addition to all the things we already do for the 10 guys in our house, which is food, clothes, hygiene, that kind of stuff, bus passes for guys getting out of prison. We went through 2 or 3 years giving away a car. We want to get back into that program where people donate their car and we fix it up and we give it away to somebody that's been impacted by incarceration. But we want eventually this resource center to be able to be a one-stop shop for people coming out of prison. Because right now you got to go here to get food stamps. You got to go here to get clothes. You got to go here to get hygiene. You got to go here. We want everybody to just come here. And we're even going to have a weight room, because some of these guys get out on ankle monitor and they cannot go have a gym membership.
They can't go anywhere.
They can't even go in Texas. They can't even go to their garage to work out. And so we want them to be able to come and be able to look for jobs. We're going to have job search. It's amazing. It's going to be incredible. We're getting really close right now. We're looking for either land to put a building on, or we're looking for an existing building. I think that would be the best. We're just need some help. If you have anybody in your sphere of influence that has a building in Dallas or knows somebody that will allow us to lease from them, we want to start out leasing, and possibly own it.
Let me do this. If anybody's listening, and I want to make sure we get it out, I want you to email them right here. Send them an email. If you've got a parcel of land that's doing nothing, if you got a building that you're about to just do nothing with, or not even doing anything with, send them an email. He will turn it around and use it for the glory of God. And I'll tell you, that's all you need to know, that God is going to get the benefit.
Amen.
And that's the most important thing. Now,
and this is, I know we're out of time. This is the thing that we're going to replicate in other states. People ask all the time. I get emails every day. Do you have anything like this in another state, in this state, this state? We don't. We're not going to do the transitional houses, try to replicate that, but the resource center.
But the resource
is what
center
we're going to replicate in other states. So we're coming to a state near you soon. We got to get it here in Dallas first, and then we're going to multiply.
So I'll share for people that know me and know that I've been talking about this resource center myself for the last 5 years. We've been talking about a one-stop shop because that's what I believe in, Jay. Listen, my vision is to have a warehouse. I've already got a drawing of it. Matter of fact, it's sitting in my desk, and being able to get everybody to come in. Incarcerated, my big thing is also, I was raised by a single mom, is taking care of single moms, because I know how devastating that can be to have somebody leave you, and somebody left my mom with 4 kids. I get it. So that's been a passion of mine. But exactly what he's talking about, folks, I've been talking about for years.
Yeah.
Because I know the impact of a one-stop shop. So this is what I want to do. Jay, in the next 30 seconds, share something with some of these guys that not only they've been incarcerated in a state institution, but they're incarcerated now, even in their own minds. Give us some words of wisdom before we leave.
On our podcast, Background Check Podcast, the motto is, your background shouldn't hold you back. It should pay you back.
Wow. And
in the Bible, the thief is required to pay back, I think 7 times, 8 times, whatever, more than, and the devil's a thief. And because of what he created in our background, it stole a lot of stuff from us.
Right.
And I'm saying right now, whether you're in a prison, real prison, cell, jail, in your mind, in your heart, the background that you have can be something that pays you back spiritually, emotionally, physically, even financially. When you start sharing your story and then people want to pay you to come share your story, it's actually literally going to start paying you back.
Paying you back.
And so you haven't gone too far. I have gone very far. And God brought me back, and God invited me back and welcomed me back. I have friends who have committed some of the most heinous crimes that have turned their life over to God. And some people think that those people won't even be in heaven, but my friends will be right there in heaven, sitting with me. Products of the blood of Jesus that covers any sin. So no matter what you've done, whether you're in prison, out of prison, no matter where you are, you're one decision away from changing your life.
Wow.
One decision.
One decision. Listen, for those that are going to listen to this, here's my ask. You share this with everybody you know. And if you don't share it, you're making the biggest mistake you've ever made. 2, that you look at this organization. This is where it's at. Sow into him. forgivenfelons.org/support. This is how we're a church. I know this is how you keep it going. And I'm keeping it real. So I want you to give him everything you've got, and we're afraid to give. Give it anyway, because God's going to bless you. Listen, if you've got lumber, he'll take it.
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
if you want to give him a gift card to Lowe's or Home Depot, he'll take it. If you want to give him a car, he'll take it. Whatever you got. Amen. God can take out of scraps and make a beautiful picture out of it. So, hey,
that's right.
Give. So time has chomped on us right here, but Jay, I want to thank you. I'm so glad for Darlene bringing us together. I'm so glad that you were one of the 5 that we connected with.
Yes, I'm excited.
And I think it's not going to be the last time, because I'm praying to God that I can get my butt into Dallas, and I want to see this operation in my own 2 eyes. And I really thank you so much for being here. So last time, I'm going to put this up. Just so everybody see it. Here's the website. Here's the money site. Here's his email. That's money right there. Get a hold of Jay. He will share his story. He will pack your house out, because everybody needs to hear this. Trust me.
And Background Check Podcast. Look us up. After you listen to this podcast on Beyond the Devastation, go to Background Check Podcast. We have 80 stories, 80 episodes on there. Just some great stories. And then if you want to see the documentary is hosted by Sting, the WWE Hall of Famer wrestling. Sting narrated our documentary. So go to Roku TV, Tubi TV, the Christian Movie Channel on YouTube, and you can watch our documentary and see some of the stories. When
I grow up, I want to be just like Jay. Hey, listen, guys, we're gonna Jay, I'm gonna drop you back in the green room.
Sorry, I went so long.
Nah, man, people need to hear this. Don't worry about it, brother. Hold on just a minute. Listen, thank you so much for my friend Jay. And it's been listen, we've been waiting for him to get on for a while, so we're really blessed. So I'm gonna play you out, and then we're gonna catch up with you next week.